goes. Okay, so I'm going to start recording, and I'm going to start out by creating some art. Oh, okay. Yes, Sky, I will check it out as soon as I'm done with this demo. Okay, so I'm gonna start by creating some art for my NPC character to use in the dialogue. So I'm gonna go over to Pascal and open it up. And I'm gonna start by adding my character design. So I'm gonna go to my game and find my character. See. Here's my character designs. And this is the character I ended up using. This design is a little bit bigger. So I'm going to use this as kind of like the basis for the dialogue. So this is 256 by 256. And so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to delete the other designs. And I just need like the head for this. So I'm going to cut out the legs. And I'm just going to make a couple different versions of this face. And you'll see why when we add in our dialogue system, because you can choose different expressions as your characters are talking. And so you don't really need to do it, but it's nice to have different expressions that you can use for the character if you want to have your dialogue system include that. So I'm going to center this guy, and I'm going to fill in here a little bit where I was erasing stuff. Oops. And I'm going to save this as a new file. So I'm going to go to save and say character portraits. So this is like a portrait like we're going to use for our dialogue system. So I'm going to click save as, and I'll put this inside my character folder and character portraits.pascal. That's fine. And so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to make a couple different expressions. I don't have to do a ton of these, but I just want a couple of them. So I'm going to duplicate this original frame, and I'm just going to fill in the eyes and mouth, and I'll redraw them. So then I'm going to duplicate it again. And so if you're working on a game that has a lot of dialogue, you might want a lot of expressions, but you don't necessarily need a lot of expressions. So it depends on what you're trying to do. I'm going to turn the grid off, and let's turn the onion skin on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just add some new expressions here. So my first one is kind of like just a default talking. I'll add an expression here that's like kind of like surprised or something. So I'll just like make the eyes like go up like this. And I'll make the mouth go like that. So this can show like surprise. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because it's just a demo, but just as an example. Okay, so that's surprise. And then maybe we'll have one where he's angry. So I'll make like some angry eyebrows, and I'll make his eyes kind of small. For some reason, Windows does not like this drawing tablet that I'm using. Sometimes it doesn't let me do it, right? Okay, so then there's an angry expression, and then let's do a happy expression. So we'll do like a smile and just do regular eyes. Okay, so that's my character portraits. Again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I just want to have something to use in my dialog system. So I'm going to export this, and I'm just going to use a sprite sheet. So I'm going to click download here and go to sprites, and this is called character portraits.png, so that's going to be fine. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to leave this open. So I'm going to click the plus to open a new Pascal window because I might want to look at it again as a reference. And so now for my NPC, I have to do two things. I have to make one, I have to have a regular animation of the NPC, at least like an idle animation. So it's like hanging out in the game world. And then I need an NPC portrait as well. So I'm going to use my character idle as an example just to get started. And I'm going to design an NPC character. I'm just going to do something real fast. I'm not going to do anything too crazy. So I'll choose a different color for my NPC. Maybe I'll make it like orange or yellowish. And I'll do a different shape. So maybe I'll do like an upside down triangle. It kind of looks like a pizza, so that's kind of fun. And this is just an idle animation, so I'm not going to do too many frames. I'm just going to keep it simple. And let's move it into the middle like that. And then I'll just give him a couple legs. And I'll give him the same color eyes and mouth. So here's one eye, here's another eye, and here's his mouth. Okay, he's kind of a sad pizza slice. So now that I've got that, I can get rid of my character and add a frame here. Actually, I'm just going to duplicate this frame. And then for my idle, I'm just going to have him blink just like the other character. So I'm just going to erase some of his eyes so he'll just be like blinking. So let's see what that looks like. That looks a little weird. Let's put the blink in the middle. So I'm going to get rid of these and just put the eyes in the middle. Okay, so that'll be good enough. So that's my NPC idle animation. And so I'm going to save this as NPC. If you have multiple NPCs that you want to create, you might want to, create a different name. So like the name of the character or something like that. But for me, since it's just a default, I'm just going to say NPC idle and click save as. And so let's see, I want this. So this is the Pascal file. So this is just in my art folder, not my game. I'm just going to create a new folder for this because I might create more NPCs in the future. So I have a new folder called NPCs. And I'm going to save this in here. Okay, so now I'm going to make the NPC portrait. So I'm almost done with the art. Actually, let's export this first. So I'm going to export the idle sprite sheet for the NPC. So I'm just going to click export and then go to my sprites in my game and click save here. So now I can make the portrait. So for this one, I'm just going to make a bigger version of this, and then I'll just do a few different expressions. So let's make a copy of this. So I'm just going to click save as, and I'm going to call it NPC portraits. So again, this is for the dialogue part. This will make sense when we actually put the dialogue system in the game. But I basically have like a big version of each character to use when the dialogue starts, and then the small version that's in the game. So I'm going to start by just increasing the size of this. So I'm going to go to resize, and I'm going to click resize canvas content so the character actually resizes. But I'm going to redraw it because it's going to look kind of goofy otherwise. So I'm going to do 256 by 256. So it's not gigantic, but it's bigger. And click resize. And so then I'm going to just use the first frame as an example. and I'm going to draw my new NPC. And I'm going to turn the grid on again so I can kind of match what I had with the character. So if we look at my character portrait with the grid on, this is a good way to make sure we're using the same basic size. So my character portrait kind of takes up most of the middle of this grid. So I'm going to try to do the same thing with my new NPC portrait. So I'm going to draw this kind of pizza shape again, and then fill that in. And so that'll be kind of the basis for the NPC face. So I'll make a few copies of this to add different expressions. And so my first expression, and I can go back to my character for this. So I can have like default expression, surprised, angry, happy. So I'll use the same thing here, so it's just easier to remember. So the default expression, I'll just have like some big eyes, and it'll just look like he's talking, and I'll fill those in. Okay, pretty easy. Let's get rid of my original. And then for the angry or for the surprise expression, I'll do the same, like eyes going up like that. And the mouth is big. And then for the angry expression, I'm going to have the downward eyebrows and the little eyes and the jagged mouth. And the last one is a happy expression, so I'm just doing a smile and normal eyes. Okay, so this looks a little weird, but it'll be good enough for our example. So those are my NPC portraits. I'm going to save this and then export. And click download, and this will go in my sprites folder. So I can see my NPC idle is right there, and so it's just going to be right next to it. So I click save. Okay, so that's the first part. We've created the art. The second part is we're going to design our NPC in Godot, and we're not going to add in the portraits quite yet. We'll do that during the dialog system demo, which we'll do next week, but we'll at least get started here. So I'm going to save this and get rid of Pascal. I'll check and see. Okay. Okay, so let's go over to Godot and add in our NPC. I'm going to open up Godot and choose my game and click edit. And so the NPC is going to be a separate scene, just like our other components. And there's a few different options for how it's going to work. But basically, we just need the character to be standing around. And when the player kind of like arrives where the character is, it's gonna trigger a dialogue. And there's different ways to do a dialogue. It doesn't have to be inside of a scene. It could just be like a whole separate scene itself. But that's the way I'm gonna set it up for now. So I'm gonna get rid of this level 1 for now and just create a new scene. So I'm gonna create a 2D scene, and we could make this for now, I'm not going to make my NPC move, so I'm not going to use a kinematic body for this. But if you wanted the NPC to move around, you could use a kinematic body here. I'm just going to use a regular Node2D, and I'll call this NPC. And then I'm going to hit Control S to save. And so this is inside my scenes folder, inside my components. So my NPC is a component, like my player and my apple and my bug, my cactus, my rewards and obstacles. So this is just npc.tscn. This is my NPC scene. If you have multiple NPCs, you might be able to use one scene and swap out the art, but you might want to make more than one scene. But you can build one NPC scene and then make copies of it if you want to. I'm going to click save here. And so now we have a few things to add in here. There is a model for the NPC in the assets. So if we go into assets and go into scenes and go into components, oh wait, maybe there isn't. There should be. I don't see it in here. Okay, so I guess I forgot to include it. But but I might need to update that because there is art for the NPC in the assets folder, so there should be a scene for it. But that's okay. We can always fix it later if we need to. So I don't know why that's not in there. I'll update this to make sure that it is in there later. But basically for our NPC, we just need an area for the player to run into, and then an animated sprite to show our NPC animation. So it's pretty simple. Actually, let's make sure we have the NPC script in here. I don't see the NPC script either. Why isn't this in here? That's okay. We don't really need the script today. We can add it next time. I don't know why this stuff is not in here. It should be in here. So I'll have to check that later. Anyway, let's just build our NPC and we'll make sure to have the script in class next time. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, and we'll start just by adding an animated sprite with our NPC art. So I'll right click here, add child node, and choose an animated sprite. And whenever we make an animated sprite, we always have to add frames. I'm going to go over to the inspector and click empty new sprite frames, and then click on the sprite frames. And then for the default, I'm not sure that it really matters here. I'm going to change this to idle. Depending on what you want to do with the NPC, you might want to add more animations, but for mine, he's just going to be standing there. And then when the player overlaps, they'll start a dialogue. So for my idle animation, I'm just going to click on my waffle here and go to sprites and choose my NPC idle. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And this only has 1 horizontal and 2 vertical frames. I'm going to add those. And then I'll click on my animated sprite so I can preview the animation. I want to turn this on. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And so he's blinking a little fast, so I'm going to copy and paste the open eyes a bit. And then let's make a copy of the blink. And then copy more of the open eyes. So now it'll look a little more natural. We've got more frames there. And that's pretty much all we need for that animation. So now what we need to do is add an area for the player to run into. So we can add a collision shape. I guess actually, I think this should be, I think the NPC should be an area. So I'm going to change the type. We can always adjust this later. Actually, let me see if my NPC code is on here, so I can at least double check. Nope. Okay. So I'll have to find out where I put that. It's probably somewhere. Anyway, let's turn this into, let's change this node type to an area. So we have an area to collide with our NPC. And an area needs a collision shape. So I'm going to go to add child node and type in collision shape. And then we will choose, so you can choose whatever you want for this. I'm going to choose a circle so the player can approach from any side. But if you want a rectangle, then maybe the player can only approach from the right or left or one side. But anyway, I'm going to make this collision shape much bigger than the NPC. As soon as my player enters this area, we're going to trigger some dialogue between our player and this NPC. Okay, so that's everything I need for my NPC. We were going to add the script, but it's not here, so I'll make sure to get it for next time. But that's all the steps. Our NPC component is pretty simple, but we are going to attach some dialogue to it, so that's going to make it more complicated. So I'm going to put this into a scene, and then we'll be all set to go next week when we add our dialogue. So I'm going to go to, let's use this RPG scene. And I'll put my NPC somewhere over here so the player has to find them. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click on my scene and click this link button. And I'll type in NPC. And there's my NPC scene at the top. So I'm going to click open. And actually it's over here. So let's go ahead and move it up here. And so now it's part of the scene. And so what we'll do next week is when our player walks into this area, it'll trigger a dialogue between the player and the NPC, and you can write whatever you want in that dialogue. So we'll use a dialogue system to handle the dialogue. You can ask the NPC questions, and they can have different answers, and they can give you, different items and things like that. So yeah, that's the first part of this demo. The second part we'll do next week after Thanksgiving. But let's take a look and see how it looks in the game so far. If I walk up here, there's my NPC, and we're going to trigger a little conversation. So that's the next bit. So I'm going to stop this part here and